In the small Rust Belt town of Millbrook, a widowed mechanic struggles to keep his world from falling apart. Cal Harper works 16-hour days at Murphy's auto shop, trying to make enough to keep his 6-year-old son fed and housed. Every morning, he starts his battered pickup truck, says a prayer, and hopes today won't be the day the bills finally catch up with him. But on this particular December morning, when Cal opens his truck door, he finds something that changes everything. A 12-year-old girl sits curled in his passenger seat, clutching a worn backpack like it holds her entire world. Her name is Luna, and she's been living on the streets for weeks, sleeping wherever she can find shelter from the bitter cold. What Cal doesn't know is that taking in this frightened child will test every belief he has about family, sacrifice, and what it means to be a father. But will his decision to help Luna cost him the one thing he can't afford to lose, his own son? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The frost on Cal Harper's windshield caught the early morning light like broken glass, each crystal reflecting the harsh reality of another December day in Millbrook. He stood in his driveway, coffee mug steaming in the bitter air, watching his breath form small clouds that disappeared as quickly as his hopes sometimes did. The pickup trucker 1998 Ford F-150, with more rust than paint sat, waiting like an old friend who'd seen better days but never complained about the journey. Cal's fingers traced the wedding ring hanging on a chain around his neck, Sarah's ring, the one she'd worn for 8 years until cancer took her voice, then her strength, then everything else. 2 years had passed since the funeral, yet he still reached for her side of the bed each morning, still saved the good coffee for 2 people, still caught himself buying her favorite cereal at the grocery store. "Daddy, is it pancake day?" Milo's voice drifted from the kitchen window, high and hopeful. 6 years old and already carrying the weight of understanding that some days were pancake days and others were toast days, depending on what remained in the checking account after rent and utilities carved their monthly wounds. "Not today, buddy," Cal called back, hating the disappointment he knew would flicker across his son's face. But maybe Saturday. Maybe Saturday. The words had become his mantra, a promise he made to keep hope alive in a small boy who'd already lost too much. Maybe Saturday they'd go to the movies. Maybe Saturday they'd get ice cream. Maybe Saturday things would be different. Inside the house, Milo was already dressed in his school clothes hand-me-downs from Mrs. Chen's grandson, carefully mended where the knees had worn through. The boy had Sarah's eyes, bright and curious, and her way of tilting his head when he listened, as if the world held secrets he was determined to unlock. "Morning, little man," Cal said, ruffling Milo's hair as he grabbed his lunchbox from the counter. Peanut butter and jelly again, the same sandwich that had filled the box for 3 weeks straight. "You remember the rules for Mrs. Chen's house. No running in the hallway, no touching her good dishes, and always say please and thank you." Milo recited the litany with the practiced ease of a child who'd learned that good behavior meant staying in the safe spaces adults created for him. Mrs. Chen had been their guardian angel since Sarah's death, watching Milo before and after school for whatever Cal could afford to pay her. She never complained about the late payments or the weeks when he could only manage half the usual amount. In a town where most people looked through him like he was already a ghost, she saw him as a man trying to hold his family together with nothing but determination and love. Murphy's auto shop sat on the edge of town where the industrial district met the residential neighborhoods, a squat brick building that had seen better decades. The sign out front advertised, "Murphy's no fancy slogans or promises, just the name of a man who'd built his reputation one honest repair at a time." Cal had worked there for 12 years, first as an apprentice fresh out of high school, then as Murphy's right-hand man when age and arthritis began slowing the older mechanic down. The pay was steady but modest, enough to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table, but not much more. "You're late," Murphy growled as Cal pushed through the shop's front door, but there was no real anger in his voice. Frank Murphy was approaching 70, a bear of a man whose gruff exterior hid a heart that had quietly supported half the struggling families in Millbrook over the years. "Sorry, Murph." Milo couldn't find his backpack. "That boy losing things or you not keeping track?" Murphy's pale blue eyes studied Cal with the intensity of someone who'd learned to read people the way he read engine problems. "You look like hell, son." Cal managed a tired smile. "Feel like it too." The garage bay doors were already open, revealing the day's work. A transmission rebuild on a Honda Civic, brake pads on a Ford Explorer, and the endless parade of winter-weary vehicles that limped in seeking salvation. This was Cal's world, the honest smell of motor oil and metal, the satisfaction of diagnosing problems and fixing them, the simple truth that a job well done meant someone could get home safely to their family. "Sarah's birthday coming up," Murphy said quietly as they walked toward the first vehicle. It wasn't a question. Murphy remembered dates the way he remembered torque specifications, with the precision of someone who understood that details mattered. "Next week." Cal's voice carried the weight of two words that encompassed everything he couldn't say. The flowers he'd buy for her grave, the way Milo would want to make her a card, the hollow ache that still opened in his chest when he thought about celebrating anything without her. "Take the day off. Paid." "Murphy, I can't." Wasn't asking. The older man's tone brooked no argument. Some things matter more than transmissions. By lunchtime, Cal had found his rhythm in the familiar dance of diagnosis and repair. His hands moved with practiced confidence, reading the story each vehicle told through its symptoms. This car had been driven too hard, that one hadn't seen enough maintenance. Another bore the scars of an owner who'd tried to fix things themselves before admitting defeat. It was honest work, the kind that left visible progress at the end of each day. Unlike the bills that multiplied in his kitchen drawer or the loneliness that crept in during quiet moments, mechanical problems had solutions. They required patience, skill, and the right tools, but they could be fixed. The afternoon brought Mrs. Rodriguez with her wheezing minivan, worried about the cost of repairs but needing the vehicle to get to her job at the hospital. Cal found the problema loose belt, tension around, charged her for 15 minutes of labor instead of the hour it should have taken. She thanked him with tears in her eyes, and he pretended not to notice when she pressed an extra 20 into his hand. "You're too soft," Murphy observed after she left. "That's why you're always broke." "She's got 4 kids and works double shifts. I'm getting by." Barely. It was true, though Cal didn't like admitting it. The math was simple and unforgiving. Rent, utilities, groceries, childcare, and the minimum payments on Sarah's medical bills that still arrived each month like accusations. There was no room for error, no buffer for the unexpected. One major repair bill, one missed day of work, one emergency could topple the careful balance he'd constructed. That evening, he picked up Milo from Mrs. Milo. Chen's apartment, listening to his son's excited chatter about school, about the book they'd read in class, about the picture he'd drawn of their family. In the drawing, 3 stick figures stood in front of a house. Daddy, me, and Mommy. Milo still drew her in every family picture, still set a place for her at the table on special occasions. "She's watching us, right, Daddy?" Milo asked, as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. "Mommy's still watching us?" "Every day, buddy. Every single day." Their apartment was small but clean, the kind of place that looked better with the lights dimmed and the curtains drawn. Sarah's presence lingered in the photographs on the mantel, in the books she'd loved that still lined the shelves, in the quilt she'd been making for Milo's bed half-finished, needles still waiting for hands that would never return. After dinner and homework and the bedtime story that had become their sacred ritual, Cal sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, calculator, and a stack of bills. The numbers told the same story they'd told for months. Not enough money, too many obligations, and time running out. The eviction notice was buried beneath the electric bill, folded and refolded so many times the creases had worn soft. 3 months behind on rent, with a court date looming in January. He'd hidden it from Milo, from Mrs. Chen, from Murphy, from everyone who might worry or try to help with money they didn't have to spare. Sarah's ring caught the light from the kitchen lamp as he moved, and for a moment he could almost hear her voice, the way she'd talked him through problems when they seemed impossible. One step at a time, Cal. One step at a time. Tomorrow would bring another day at the shop, another chance to earn enough to keep them afloat a little longer. Tomorrow Milo would wake up safe and loved, blissfully unaware of how close they walked to the edge. Tomorrow Cal would climb into his old truck, say his prayer, and hope that maybe, just maybe, things would start looking up. He had no way of knowing that tomorrow would bring a 12-year-old girl with secrets in her backpack and a story that would change everything. He couldn't have imagined that his greatest act of compassion would become his salvation, or that sometimes the family you need finds you when you're not looking for it. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight, he was just a father trying to hold his world together, one day at a time, one step at a time, one prayer at a time. The December morning air hit Cal's face like a slap, sharp enough to make his eyes water. Frost had painted everything, silver the mailbox, the neighbor's fence, even the weeds growing through the cracks in the sidewalk. His breath formed small clouds as he walked toward his truck, keys jangling in his hand, already mentally preparing for another day of coaxing life from dying engines. He grabbed the door handle and pulled, expecting the familiar groan of protesting hinges. Instead, he found himself staring at something that made no sense. A child curled in his passenger seat, knees drawn up to her chest, clutching a threadbare backpack like a shield against the world. The girl couldn't have been more than 12, with dark hair that hung in tangles around, a face pale from cold and exhaustion. Her clothes were layered too many shirts under a jacket that had seen better seasons, jeans with holes that weren't fashionable but spoke of wear and desperation. She looked up at him with eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young, eyes that had seen things no child should witness. For a moment, neither of them moved. Cal's first instinct was to step back, to call the police, to handle this the way a responsible adult should. But something in her expression, the way she pressed herself deeper into the corner, the way her fingers tightened on that worn backpack stopped him cold. "Hey there," he said softly, the way he'd learned to speak to wounded animals. "You okay?" She didn't answer, just watched him with the wariness of someone who'd learned that adults could be dangerous. Her lips were slightly blue from the cold, and Cal noticed she was shivering despite all those layers. "What's your name?" he tried again, leaving the door open but not moving closer. "I'm Cal. This is my truck." Still nothing. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of traffic and the steady drip of melting frost from the neighbor's gutters. Cal's mind raced through possibilities: runaway, lost child, something worse he didn't want to consider. "Are you hurt?" The question came out more urgent than he'd intended, and the girl flinched slightly. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to make sure you're okay." Her eyes darted to the backpack, then back to his face. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from cold or crying or both. "Please don't call them." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Please don't call them. Not please help me or I'm lost, but please don't call them." Whoever they were, this child was more afraid of them than she was of a strange man finding her in his truck. Cal's chest tightened. He thought of Milo, safe and warm in Mrs. Chen's apartment, probably eating toast with strawberry jam and asking questions about everything he saw. The contrast between his son's security and this girl's obvious terror made his hands shake. "How long have you been out here?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. "I don't know." She pulled the backpack closer. "A while." The morning was getting later. Soon, Milo would be expecting him to pick up lunch money, and Murphy would be wondering where he was. But Cal couldn't bring himself to leave this child, couldn't walk away from someone who looked like she hadn't had a safe place to sleep in weeks. "Are you hungry?" The question seemed to surprise her. She nodded slowly, and Cal caught a glimpse of the frightened little girl beneath the defensive walls she'd built. "Okay, here's what we're going to do." He kept his movements slow and deliberate. "I'm going to go inside and get you something to eat. You can stay right here if you want, or you can come with me. But either way, I'm not calling anyone until you tell me what's going on. Deal?" She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether he could be trusted. Finally, she gave the smallest nod. Cal closed the truck door gently and headed back to his apartment, his mind spinning. This was insane. He was a single father, barely keeping his own life together, and now he was taking responsibility for a child who clearly had serious problems. The smart thing would be to call child services, let the professionals handle it. But the smart thing felt wrong. Something about the way she'd said, "Please don't call them," made his stomach turn. He'd grown up in the system himself, bounced between foster homes until he aged out at 18. He knew what it was like to be a number on a caseworker's file, to be moved around like furniture when things got complicated. Inside the apartment, he made 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, grabbed a thermos of coffee and a juice box from Milo's stash. Simple food, nothing threatening. When he returned to the truck, the girl was still there, though she looked ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. "Here." He handed her the sandwich through the partially open window. "It's not much, but it's something." She took it with trembling fingers and bit into it like she hadn't eaten in days. Watching her eat, Cal felt something shift inside his chest, the same protective instinct that had kicked in the day Milo was born, fierce and immediate and non-negotiable. "What's your name?" he asked again, settling into the driver's seat, but leaving plenty of space between them. "Luna." The word came out around a mouthful of sandwich. "Luna. That's a pretty name." He poured coffee into the thermos cap and handed it to her. "How old are you, Luna?" 12. 12 years old and living in his truck. The thought made Cal's jaw clench. "Where are your parents?" The change in her expression was immediate and devastating. Her face closed off, and she set down the sandwich like she'd lost her appetite. "Foster home," she whispered, "but I can't go back. I won't go back." The words carried weight that spoke of more than just typical teenage rebellion. Cal had heard that tone before, in his own voice, when he was 15 and sleeping under bridges, rather than return to a home where hands wandered where they shouldn't. "Okay," he said simply. "You don't have to go back. Not today." Luna's eyes widened with surprise, as if kindness was something she'd forgotten existed. "But I need to know you're safe, and I have a son who's going to be wondering where I am pretty soon." Cal pulled out his phone and showed her Milo's picture from his lock screen. "His name's Milo. He's 6. She studied the photo with something that might have been longing. "He looks happy." "He is, most of the time." Cal slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, and I'm not going to force you to tell me. But it's December, it's cold, and you're just a kid. How about this, you come inside for a few hours, get warm, maybe take a shower, and eat something real. We'll figure out the rest later. You don't even know me." "No, I don't. But I know what it's like to be scared and alone, and I know nobody should have to sleep in a truck when there's a warm apartment 20 feet away." Luna was quiet for a long time, her small hands wrapped around the coffee cup like it was anchoring her to something solid. When she finally looked at him, Cal saw the exact moment she decided to trust him, a leap of faith that probably went against every survival instinct she'd developed. "Just for a few hours?" "Just for a few hours. And Luna?" He waited until she met his eyes. "Nobody's going to hurt you here, I promise." She nodded slowly and gathered her backpack, following him up the stairs to the apartment, like a ghost learning to cast a shadow. Cal opened the door to his small living space, modest and worn but clean, filled with the comfortable chaos of a man raising a child alone. "The bathroom's down the hall if you want to wash up," he said, setting her sandwich on the kitchen table. "There are clean towels in the closet." Luna stood in the middle of the living room, clutching her backpack, looking like she might run at any second. Her eyes took in everything: the photographs of Sarah and Milo on the mantel, the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, the warmth that came from a place where people loved each other. "This is home," she said softly, and something in her voice broke Cal's heart all over again. "Yeah," he said, "it is." As Luna disappeared into the bathroom, Cal sat at his kitchen table and tried to process what he'd just done. He'd brought a runaway into his home, promised protection he might not be able to provide, and committed himself to helping a child whose story he didn't even know. The smart voice in his head catalogued all the ways this could go. Wrong legal trouble, financial strain, complications with Milo's custody. But the louder voice, the one that sounded like Sarah's, reminded him that some decisions weren't about being smart, they were about being human. When Luna emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, she looked younger somehow, her face clean and her hair damp but combed. She'd changed into slightly less wrinkled clothes from her backpack, and Cal noticed how thin she was, how her jeans hung loose, despite the belt holding them up. "Better?" he asked. She nodded, settling carefully into the chair across from him. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Cal poured himself a cup of coffee and tried to figure out what came next. "Luna, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think before you answer. Is there anyone who's going to be worried about you? Anyone who needs to know you're safe?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Worried about me?" The way she said it, like the concept was foreign-made. Cal's chest tightened again. Every child should have someone who worried about them, someone who noticed when they didn't come home. "Yeah. A friend, a relative, anyone." Luna was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. "There's my brother, Marcus, but I don't know where he is." "Older brother?" 16. "We got separated when they moved me to a different home 6 months ago." Her voice got smaller. "He promised he'd find me, but he never did." Cal felt like he was getting pieces of a puzzle that might never form a complete picture. A 12-year-old girl, a missing brother, foster homes that weren't safe. It was the kind of story that kept social workers up at night and made decent people want to fix things they had no power to change. "What about your caseworker? Someone from the state?" Luna's reaction was immediate and visceral. She shrank back in her chair, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "No, please. They'll just move me again, and I'll never find Marcus. They don't care about keeping families together." The pain in her voice was so raw that Cal had to look away. He thought about his own childhood, the way he'd been shuffled from home to home, like a problem nobody wanted to solve permanently. The system meant well, but it was overwhelmed and understaffed, and kids like Luna fell through the cracks every day. "Okay," he said finally. "No caseworker. Not today." Relief flooded her face, and she relaxed slightly. Outside, Cal could hear the neighbor's dog barking and the distant sound of children playing normal sounds from a normal day that felt anything but normal now. "I have to go to work," he said gently. "But I don't want to leave you here alone, and I can't take you with me. What do you think we should do?" Luna considered this, her young face serious. "I could just go. You've done enough." "That's not what I asked." Cal's voice was firm but kind. "I asked what you think we should do. You're part of this decision." She looked surprised again, as if having input in decisions about her own life was a new concept. "I don't know." "Well, here's what I'm thinking. There's a lady downstairs, Mrs. Chen, who watches my son after school. She's good people, and she won't ask questions you don't want to answer. Would you be okay staying with her for a few hours while I'm at work? She won't call anyone? Not if I ask her not to. Mrs. Chen understands that sometimes people need a safe place to think." Luna nodded slowly. "Okay." As Cal gathered his work clothes and called Murphy to let him know he'd be late, he caught Luna looking at the family photos on the mantel. She studied them with the intensity of someone trying to understand a foreign language. "She was beautiful," Luna said quietly, looking at a picture of Sarah. "Yeah, she was." Cal joined her in front of the mantel. "She died 2 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." He picked up the photo, Sarah laughing at something Milo had said, her face bright with joy and life. "She would have liked you. She always said home wasn't a place, it was the people who loved you." Luna was quiet for a moment. "I've never had that. The people who love you part." The simple honesty of the statement hit Cal like a physical blow. Here was a child who'd never experienced unconditional love, who'd learned to survive on scraps of kindness and her own fierce will. "Well," he said, surprising himself with the words, "maybe that can change." As they walked downstairs to Mrs. Chen's apartment, Cal tried to ignore the voice in his head that was cataloguing all the ways this decision could destroy everything he'd worked to build. Luna was a complication he couldn't afford, a responsibility that could jeopardize his custody of Milo if things went wrong. But looking at her now, this brave, broken child, who'd asked for nothing more than someone not to call them, Cal knew he was already in too deep to turn back. Whatever came next, he was committed to seeing it through. Sometimes the most important decisions in life weren't the ones you made with your head. They were the ones you made with your heart, in the space between one breath and the next, when someone needed you and you had the power to help. Luna needed him, and maybe, though he wasn't ready to admit it yet, he needed her too. Mrs. Chen answered her door in a faded pink bathrobe, her grey hair still in curlers from the night before. Her dark eyes moved from Cal to Luna and back again, taking in the situation with the quick assessment of someone who'd lived long enough to recognize trouble when it knocked on her door at 8 in the morning. "This is Luna," Cal said simply. "She needs a safe place to stay for a few hours while I'm at work." Mrs. Chen studied Luna's face with the gentle intensity of a grandmother, noting the hollowed cheeks and the way the girl held herself like she was ready to run. "Have you eaten breakfast, child?" Luna shook her head, and Mrs. Chen stepped aside to let them in. Her apartment smelled like jasmine tea and the ointment she used for her arthritis, familiar scents that always made Cal think of safety and kindness. "Then we'll start there." Mrs. Chen moved toward her small kitchen with the purposeful stride of someone who believed most problems could be improved with food. "Milo will be here in an hour for lunch. He'll be excited to meet you." As Cal watched Luna settle onto Mrs. Chen's worn sofa, accepting a cup of hot tea with trembling hands, he felt the weight of the decision he'd made. This wasn't just about a few hours anymore. He could see it in the way Luna looked around the apartment with the wonder of someone who'd forgotten what safety felt like. "I'll be back by 5, he told Mrs. Chen quietly. "If anything happens." "Nothing will happen." Mrs. Chen's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd raised 6 children and buried 1 husband. "Some birds need time to heal before they can fly again." At Murphy's shop, Cal threw himself into work with unusual intensity, as if changing oil and replacing brake pads could somehow make sense of the morning's events. But his hands shook slightly as he worked, and he found himself checking his phone every few minutes, waiting for a call that would tell him he'd made a terrible mistake. "You're jumpier than a cat in a doghouse," Murphy observed around noon, watching Cal fumble with a simple socket wrench. "Everything okay at home?" Cal considered lying, offering some simple explanation that wouldn't require him to reveal that he'd basically kidnapped a runaway child. But Murphy had known him too long, had seen him through Sarah's illness and death, had been more father figure than boss for the past 12 years. "I found a kid sleeping in my truck this morning," he said finally. 12 years old, been living on the streets." Murphy's weathered hands stilled on the engine he'd been examining. "Foster kid?" "Yeah. Says she can't go back." The older man was quiet for a long moment, his pale eyes thoughtful. "What'd you do?" "What do you think I did? I couldn't leave her out there." "Course not." Murphy wiped his hands on an old rag, considering. "What's your plan?" "I don't have one," Cal laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm barely keeping my own life together, and now I've got this kid who needs help I don't know how to give. Sometimes the right thing and the smart thing aren't the same thing." "Yeah, well, I've never been accused of being too smart." Murphy's smile was gentle. "No, but you've got something more important than smart. You've got heart." When Cal returned to Mrs. Chen's that evening, he found Luna and Milo building a fort out of couch cushions in the living room. The sight stopped him cold, his son's bright laughter mixing with something he'd never heard from Luna before. The tentative sound of a child learning to play again. "Daddy!" Milo launched himself into Cal's arms with his usual enthusiasm. "Luna knows how to make the best forts ever. She says when she was little, she and her brother used to build castles out of blankets." Cal met Luna's eyes over Milo's head. She looked different somehow, more relaxed, younger. Her hair was braided in a neat plait, and she was wearing one of Mrs. Chen's oversized sweaters that made her look even smaller than she was. "Mrs. Chen taught me how to braid," Luna said quietly, touching her hair self-consciously. "I never knew how before." The simple statement hit Cal with unexpected force. Here was a 12-year-old girl who'd never learned something as basic as braiding her own hair. It made him wonder what other small pieces of childhood she'd missed, what other gaps existed in the foundation that should have been built by loving parents. "It looks nice," he said, and meant it. That evening, after picking up Chinese takeout because he couldn't bear the thought of making Luna eat another peanut butter sandwich, Cal tried to establish some kind of routine. Luna sat at their small kitchen table, carefully using chopsticks, while Milo peppered her with questions about everything from her favorite color to whether she'd ever seen a real elephant. "Do you have a daddy?" Milo asked, with the innocent directness that only 6-year-olds possessed. Luna's chopsticks stilled. "No. Not anymore." "Mine's right there." Milo pointed at Cal with his fork. "He fixes cars and makes really good pancakes on Saturdays. Well, sometimes Saturdays, when we have enough money for the good syrup." Cal winced at his son's casual mention of their financial struggles, but Luna just nodded like she understood completely. "Money's always the problem, isn't it?" she said. "What do you mean?" Cal asked. "Nothing." Luna went back to her food, but Cal caught the way her expression had shuttered again, the practiced way she'd learned to deflect attention from topics that hurt. After dinner, while Milo took his bath, Cal found Luna on the living room floor, carefully organizing the contents of her backpack. It wasn't much, a few changes of clothes, a toothbrush, some crackers wrapped in a napkin, and a small pile of letters bound with a rubber band. "What are those?" he asked gently. Luna's hands moved protectively over the letters. "From Marcus, my brother. The last foster family let us write to each other for a while before they moved me. Can I see?" She hesitated, then handed him the top letter. The handwriting was young but careful, full of the determination of someone trying to hold a family together with words alone. "Luna, I'm going to find you. I promise. Mrs. Davidson says they might let me visit soon if I keep my grades up and don't get in any more fights. I've been good for 3 weeks now. I think about you every day. Stay strong, little sister. We're going to be together again soon. Marcus." The letter was dated 4 months ago. "The last one came in October," Luna said quietly. Then nothing. Cal handed the letter back, his throat tight. Maybe he moved too. Maybe his new family doesn't let him write letters. Maybe. But Luna's voice carried the weight of someone who'd learned not to hope too hard for things that might not come true. That night, Cal made up the couch for Luna, bringing her extra blankets and one of Milo's stuffed animals-worn teddy bear named Mr. Buttons, who'd been Milo's constant companion since he was 2. "Milo wanted you to have this," Cal explained. "He says Mr. Buttons is very good at keeping nightmares away." Luna accepted the bear with something approaching reverence, holding it carefully like she was afraid it might break. "He won't miss it? He's got plenty of others. Besides, he thinks you need it more than he does right now." As Cal tucked her in, Luna looked up at him with those 2 old eyes. "This is just for tonight, right? Tomorrow I should probably go." "Where would you go?" The question seemed to surprise her. "I don't know. Somewhere." "Luna, it's December. It's supposed to snow tomorrow night. You can't just wander around looking for somewhere to sleep." Cal sat on the edge of the coffee table, meeting her eyes. "Look, I don't know what the right answer is here. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. But I know you're safe here tonight, and that's enough for now. What about your son? What if I'm bad for him? Are you planning to be bad for him?" "No, but—" "Then don't worry about it." Cal's voice was firm but gentle. "Milo's a good judge of character. He likes you, which means you're probably okay in my book too." Luna was quiet for a moment then. "I drew a picture today. For Milo." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a piece of construction paper. In crayon, she'd drawn 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. The figures were labeled in careful block letters, Daddy, Milo, and Luna. The simple drawing hit Cal like a punch to the chest. Here was a child so starved for family that she'd drawn herself into theirs after knowing them for less than a day. "It's beautiful," he managed. "Mrs. Chen helped me with the hands. I'm not very good at drawing hands. None of us are. That's why God invented stick figures." Luna's laugh was soft but genuine, the first truly happy sound he'd heard from her. As Cal turned off the lights and headed toward his own room, he found himself thinking about the drawing, about the way she'd written her name with such careful hope. In his bedroom, he pulled out his laptop and did something he probably should have done hours ago. He searched for missing children named Luna in the state database. What he found made his stomach turn. Luna Reeves, age 12, missing from state custody for 3 weeks. Last seen at Riverside Group Home. Considered a chronic runaway. Chronic runaway. The clinical term made it sound like a behavioral problem rather than what it really was. Child so desperate to escape her circumstances that she'd risk everything for the chance of something better. The file contained more details than Cal wanted to know. Multiple foster placements, behavioral issues stemming from trauma, separation from her brother Marcus, who'd aged out of the system 6 months ago and was no longer in state custody. The last entry noted that Luna had run away from her current placement after an incident that wasn't specified, but had resulted in her case being flagged for immediate intervention. Cal closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of his apartment settling around him. In the living room, Luna was probably lying awake too, wondering what tomorrow would bring. In his own bed, Milo slept the sound sleep of a child who'd never had to question whether the adults in his life would keep him safe. The smart thing would be to call the number listed in Luna's file, report her location, and let the system take over. But Cal had been part of that system once. He knew how it worked, how children like Luna became statistics and case numbers rather than human beings with hopes and fears and dreams. He thought about the drawing taped to his refrigerator now, about the way Luna had braided Milo's hair into tiny pigtails while they built their fort, about the letters from a brother who might or might not still be looking for her. Maybe Murphy was right. Maybe sometimes the right thing and the smart thing weren't the same. And maybe, for the first time since Sarah died, Cal was about to do something that felt more right than smart. Tomorrow he would call in sick to work and spend the day trying to figure out how to keep a promise. He hadn't even realized he'd made the promise that Luna would be safe, that she wouldn't have to keep running, that sometimes broken families could be repaired with nothing more than love and stubbornness and the willingness to take things one day at a time. Outside his window, the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, gentle and quiet, covering the world in a blanket of clean white that made everything look possible again. Snow continued falling through the night, and by morning Millbrook looked like a Christmas card, white and pristine and full of promise. Cal woke to the sound of hushed voices from the kitchen, and when he emerged, he found Luna helping Milo make breakfast, both of them covered in flour and giggling about something that had happened while he slept. "We made pancakes," Milo announced proudly. "Luna knows the secret ingredient." "Which is?" "You have to mix it with your whole heart," Luna said seriously, then blushed when Cal smiled. "That's what my brother used to say." The pancakes were slightly lopsided and definitely too thick, but they tasted like the best thing Cal had eaten in months. He watched Luna carefully cut her stack into precise squares, savoring each bite like she was afraid it might disappear. When was the last time she'd had a real breakfast? When was the last time she'd felt safe enough to cook with someone? "Luna," he said carefully, "we need to talk about what happens next." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "You want me to leave?" "No, I want to understand what you need." Cal set down his coffee cup and leaned forward. "Yesterday you said you couldn't go back to your foster home. Can you tell me why?" Luna's eyes darted to Milo, who was building a fort out of his pancakes and humming under his breath. She shook her head slightly. Cal understood. Some conversations weren't meant for 6-year-old ears. "Milo, buddy, why don't you go get dressed for school? The snow's pretty deep, so you'll need your boots." After Milo disappeared down the hall, Luna's carefully constructed composure began to crack. Her hands shook as she set down her fork, and Cal could see her struggling with how much to reveal. "The man there," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Patterson. He said I reminded him of his daughter, but not in a good way. He said I needed to learn how to be grateful for what I had." The way she said it made Cal's blood run cold. He'd heard those words before, in his own childhood, from men who believed children were property to be used however they saw fit. "Did he hurt you?" Luna nodded, tears spilling over despite her efforts to hold them back. "Not like you're thinking. But he would come into my room at night and sit on my bed and tell me stories about what happened to ungrateful children. He said if I told anyone, they'd split me and Marcus up forever." Cal's hands clenched into fists under the table. The casual cruelty of accusing a child's love for her brother as a weapon to ensure her silence made him want to drive to that foster home and have a very direct conversation with Mr. Patterson. "Luna, that's not okay. What he did, what he said, none of that is your fault." "I know." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But knowing doesn't make it stop happening, so I left." "And you've been on your own for 3 weeks?" "Mostly. Sometimes I'd find places to sleep, the library, the hospital waiting room. I got pretty good at looking like I belonged somewhere." Cal tried to imagine this small girl navigating the world alone, finding ways to stay warm and fed and hidden from the people who were supposed to be looking for her. The picture made his chest ache. What about Marcus? The letters stopped in October. His last letter said they were moving him to a group home in the city. He was going to try to get a job, save money so we could be together when I turn 18. Luna's voice got smaller. "But that's 6 years away. I can't run for 6 years." "You won't have to." The words were out before Cal could stop them, and Luna looked at him with something between hope and disbelief. "What do you mean?" Cal pulled the eviction notice from where he'd hidden it behind the coffee maker, unfolding the crumpled paper with hands that weren't quite steady. "I mean, I can barely take care of myself and Milo. I'm 3 months behind on rent. I've got medical bills from my wife's cancer treatment that I'll probably never pay off. And my truck needs about $2,000 worth of work just to pass inspection." Luna's face fell. "So you can't?" "I didn't say I can't. I said it's going to be complicated." Cal smoothed the notice flat on the table. "But here's what I think. I think you and Milo need each other. I think you've been taking care of yourself for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to let someone else worry about you. And I think maybe trying to help you figure out your life might help me figure out mine. You want me to stay. I want you to be safe. I want you to have a chance to be a kid instead of constantly looking over your shoulder. I want you to find your brother, and I want to help you do it." Cal met her eyes. "But if you stay, we do this right. No more running. We find a way to make it legal, make it safe for all of us." Luna was quiet for a long time, studying his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "What if they won't let you? What if they say you're not good enough? Then we'll prove them wrong. What if we can't?" Cal thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the systems and bureaucrats and legal complications that stood between them and any kind of happy ending. Then he thought about the drawing on his refrigerator, about the way Luna had helped Milo with his pancakes, about the letters from a brother who'd promised to find her. Then at least we'll have tried, and sometimes trying is enough. The conversation was interrupted by Milo's return, bundled in his winter coat and dragging his backpack behind him. "Are we walking to Mrs. Chen's? The snow's really deep." "Actually," Cal said, making another decision that felt more right than smart, "I'm taking the day off. I thought maybe we could all stay home together." Milo's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Can we build a snowman?" "If Luna wants to." All eyes turned to Luna, who looked like she'd never been asked what she wanted to do with the day before. "I've never built a snowman." "Then we'll teach you," Milo said, with the absolute confidence of someone who believed all problems had solutions. "It's easy. You just roll the snow into balls and stack them up." "It's a little more complicated than that," Cal laughed. "But we'll figure it out." They spent the morning in the apartment's small backyard, building what had to be the most structurally unsound snowman in Millbrook's history. Luna proved to be a perfectionist, insisting on finding the exact right sticks for arms and carefully arranging the buttons on the snowman's chest. Milo provided commentary and enthusiasm, while Cal marveled at how normal this felt playing in the snow with two kids, none of them worried about anything beyond making their snowman's hat sit straight. "He needs a name," Milo declared, as they stepped back to admire their creation. "How do you know it's a he?" Luna asked. "Good point. Maybe it's a she. Or maybe it doesn't matter," Luna said thoughtfully. "Maybe the snowman is just happy to exist." There was something profound in her simple observation, something that spoke to the wisdom children developed when they'd learned early that existence itself was a gift not to be taken for granted. That afternoon, while Milo napped on the couch, Cal and Luna sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, searching for any trace of Marcus Reeves in the state system. What they found was both encouraging and heartbreaking. Marcus had indeed been moved to a group home in the city, but he'd run away 2 weeks later. His current whereabouts were unknown. "He's looking for me," Luna said with quiet certainty. "That's why he ran. He's trying to find me." Cal studied the grainy photo on the screener boy with Luna's dark hair and serious eyes, 16 years old, but looking older in the way kids from the system often did. "We'll find him, both of you." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." That evening, as Cal tucked Luna into her makeshift bed on the couch, she handed him another drawing, this one, showing 4 stick figures instead of 3. The fourth was taller, with spiky hair and a smile that took up half his face. "That's Marcus," she explained. "I drew him the way I remember him, from before everything got so hard." Cal looked at the drawing, at the way she'd positioned Marcus next to her in the lineup, their stick figure hands touching. "Tell me about him." "He used to make up stories to help me fall asleep, about princesses who saved themselves and dragons who were really just lonely and misunderstood." Luna's voice grew soft with memory. "He said someday we'd have our own house with a big kitchen where we could cook whatever we wanted and a yard where we could plant a garden." "That sounds nice." "He promised me we'd never be separated forever. He said families that choose each other are stronger than families that just happen." Luna clutched Mr. Blight, buttons closer. "Do you think that's true?" Cal thought about Sarah, who'd chosen to love him despite his rough edges and complicated past. He thought about Murphy, who'd become the father Cal had never had through nothing more than consistent kindness. He thought about Mrs. Chen, who watched Milo not because she had to, but because she wanted their small family to succeed. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think that's the truest thing anyone's ever said." As Luna settled into sleep, Cal found himself standing at his kitchen window, looking out at the snow-covered street and thinking about the conversation they'd had that morning. He'd made promises he wasn't sure he could keep, committed himself to a path that led through legal minefields and bureaucratic nightmares. But watching Luna laugh as she built her first snowman, seeing the way she and Milo had bonded over pancakes and stick-figure drawings, Cal knew he'd do whatever it took to keep this fragile new family together, even if it meant risking everything he'd already built. The eviction notice still sat on his kitchen counter, a reminder of how precarious their situation really was. But for the first time in months, Cal wasn't thinking about all the ways things could go wrong. Instead, he was thinking about Marcus, somewhere out there in the cold, probably searching for his sister. He was thinking about Luna, finally safe enough to sleep without looking over her shoulder. He was thinking about Milo, who'd gained a sister and a sense of purpose beyond his years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, phone calls to make, legal hurdles to navigate, financial pressures that wouldn't disappear just because he'd decided to help a runaway child. But tonight, all 3 of them were warm and fed and together, and sometimes that was enough to build a future on. The snow continued to fall outside, covering their footprints in the backyard, erasing the evidence of their perfect day. But the snowman remained, slightly crooked and definitely imperfect, standing guard over a family that was learning what it meant to choose each other, one day at a time. The knock on Cal's door came at 7 in the morning, sharp and official. Through the peephole, he could see a woman in a dark coat holding a clipboard. the kind of purposeful stance that spoke of government authority and uncomfortable questions. Luna was already awake, sitting on the couch with Mr. Buttons clutched against her chest. The sound had triggered something primal in her, the fear that had kept her alive on the streets but had no place in what was supposed to be a safe home. "It's okay," Cal whispered, though his own heart was hammering. "Stay here with Milo." The woman at the door introduced herself as Janet Morrison from Child Protective Services. She was younger than Cal had expected, with tired eyes that suggested she'd seen too much and helped too little. Her smile was professional but not unkind. "Mr. Harper, I'm here about Luna Reeves. We have reports that she's been staying with you." Cal's mind raced. Who could have reported them? Mrs. Chen would never. She understood too well what it meant to protect children who needed protecting. A neighbor, maybe, or someone who'd seen Luna coming and going. "Can I see some identification?" he asked, buying time. Morrison showed him her badge and state ID, everything official and terrifying. "Mr. Harper, I need to see Luna. I need to verify that she's safe." "She's safe. I'm sure she is, but I still need to see her." Cal stepped aside, and Morrison entered his small apartment. Her eyes took in everything: the drawings on the refrigerator, the makeshift bed on the couch, the general chaos of a home where children lived and played and felt secure. Luna emerged from behind the couch like a deer caught in headlights. She'd changed into her cleanest clothes and combed her hair, but nothing could hide the terror in her eyes or the way she positioned herself between Morrison and the hallway where Milo's room was located. "Hello, Luna," Morrison said gently. "I'm Janet. I've been looking for you." "I'm not going back." Luna's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the strength of absolute conviction. "I won't go back there." Morrison glanced at Cal, then back at Luna. "Can you tell me why?" For a moment, Cal thought Luna might refuse to answer, but then she lifted her chin and looked Morrison directly in the eye, and Cal saw the courage that had carried her through 3 weeks on the streets. "Mr. Patterson said I reminded him of his daughter. He would come into my room at night and tell me stories about what happened to children who weren't grateful." Luna's voice stayed steady, though her hands shook. "He said if I told anyone, they'd make sure I never saw my brother again." Morrison's professional composure cracked slightly. She made notes on her clipboard, but Cal could see the anger in the set of her shoulders. "Did he touch you inappropriately?" "No, but he made me feel like he wanted to, like it was only a matter of time." "And that's why you ran?" "I couldn't stay there. I couldn't pretend everything was okay when it wasn't." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying Luna's face. "And how long have you been staying here?" 4 days, Cal answered. "I found her sleeping in my truck." "Mr. Harper, you understand that harboring a runaway minor is a serious offense. I understand that letting a 12-year-old freeze to death is worse." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "No one's saying you did the wrong thing, but we need to follow proper procedures. Luna needs to be placed in a safe, licensed home while we investigate her allegations against the Patterson family." "This is a safe home." Cal's voice was steady but firm. "She's fed, she's warm, she's happy. She's bonding with my son, and for the first time in weeks, she's not looking over her shoulder." "Mr. Harper, I appreciate what you've done, but you're not a licensed foster parent. You haven't been through the background checks, the training, the home study. The system exists for a reason." The system failed her. Cal gestured toward Luna, who was watching the conversation like her life depended on every word. "The system put her in a home where she wasn't safe, separated her from her brother, and turned her into a case number instead of a human being. Sometimes the system fails, but that doesn't mean we abandon it entirely." Luna stepped forward, her small hands clenched into fists. "What if I don't want to go to another foster home? What if I want to stay here?" "Luna, it's not that simple." "Why not?" Luna's voice grew stronger, more insistent. "Cal's taking care of me. He gives me food and a place to sleep, and he doesn't scare me. Milo treats me like I'm his sister. Why isn't that enough?" Morrison looked between Cal and Luna, clearly struggling with a situation that didn't fit neatly into any of her training manuals. Because there are laws, Luna, procedures that protect children. From what? From people who actually want to help them. Before Morrison could answer, Milo emerged from his bedroom, rubbing sleep from his eyes and taking in the scene with the quick assessment of a child who'd learned to read adult tension. "Is Luna in trouble?" he asked, moving to stand next to her with the unconscious loyalty of someone who'd already claimed her as family. "No one's in trouble," Morrison said gently. "We're just talking." "About taking Luna away?" The direct question hung in the air like a challenge. Morrison glanced at Cal, who shrugged slightly. Milo had always been too smart for comfortable lies. "Maybe," Morrison admitted. "We need to make sure Luna is in the best place possible." "She is in the best place." Milo's voice carried the absolute certainty of childhood. "She helps me with my homework, and she knows how to make really good forts, and she braids my hair when Daddy's at work. She belongs here." Cal watched Morrison's professional facade continue to crack. This wasn't a case of neglect or abuse or even misguided charity. This was a family forming itself around need and love and the simple recognition that some people belonged together. "Mr. Harper," Morrison said finally, "what exactly are you proposing?" "I want to apply for emergency custody. I want to go through the proper channels, get licensed, do whatever it takes to make this legal." Cal's voice grew more confident as he spoke. "I want to help Luna find her brother. I want to give her a chance to be a kid again. The process takes months, background checks, home studies, court hearings, and there's no guarantee. Then we'll take it one day at a time. But Luna doesn't leave this house unless it's to go somewhere she wants to go." Morrison closed her eyes briefly, and Cal could see her weighing protocols against humanity, rules against the evidence of her own eyes. When she opened them again, there was something different in her expression. "I can give you 48 hours, she said finally. 48 hours to file the paperwork for emergency custody, to get the process started. If you can show me that you're serious about doing this right, I can recommend temporary placement while we work through the system." Luna's face lit up with hope so bright it was almost painful to look at. "Really? Really? But Mr. Harper, if you're going to do this, you need to understand what you're taking on. Luna's been traumatized. She'll need counseling, medical care, educational support. She's not just a child who needs a home, she's a child who needs healing." "I understand." "Do you? Because foster children come with complications, attachment issues, behavioral problems, triggers you might not see coming. And Luna's been on her own for weeks. She's learned to survive, but survival skills don't always translate well to family life." Cal looked at Luna, who was listening to this discussion of her problems and limitations with the resigned expression of someone who'd heard it all before. "She's not a problem to be solved," he said quietly. "She's a person who deserves a chance." Morrison made more notes on her clipboard, but Cal could see that something had shifted in her assessment. 48 hours, Mr. Harper. File the paperwork, start the process, and I'll do what I can to help. But if anything goes wrong, if there are any problems at all, Luna comes into state custody immediately." After Morrison left, the apartment felt different, charged with possibility and terror in equal measure. Luna sat on the couch, still clutching Mr. Buttons, processing what had just happened. "So I can stay?" she asked quietly. "For now, while we figure out how to make it permanent. What if they say no? What if they decide you're not good enough?" Cal sat beside her on the couch, choosing his words carefully. "Then we'll prove them wrong, and if we can't prove them wrong, we'll find another way. But Luna, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about you staying here. This is about building something real, something that will last. Are you ready for that?" Luna nodded, though Cal could see the fear still lurking in her eyes. She'd been disappointed too many times to fully believe in happy endings. But she was willing to try, and sometimes that was enough to start with. "Okay then," Cal said, pulling out his laptop. "Let's figure out how to become a family the legal way." As he began researching emergency custody procedures, Cal felt the weight of the commitment he'd just made. 48 hours to convince the state that a widowed mechanic with financial problems could provide a stable home for a traumatized runaway. 48 hours to prove that love and determination could overcome bureaucracy and legal obstacles. It should have felt impossible. Instead, it felt like the first step on a journey that would define the rest of their lives. The next morning found Cal sitting at his kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork that might as well have been written in a foreign language. Emergency custody applications, background check forms, financial disclosure statements, each document a barrier between his small family and any kind of legal recognition. Luna sat across from him, carefully reading through a victim impact statement that Morrison had left for her to complete. Her young face was serious as she worked, occasionally pausing to ask Cal how to spell a word or explain a legal term that made no sense to either of them. It says here, "I need to describe the nature of the trauma I experienced," Luna said, her voice carefully neutral. "How do I explain that someone made me feel unsafe without actually doing anything I can prove?" Cal looked up from his own stack of forms. "You tell the truth, exactly the way you told Morrison yesterday. What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm making it up because I don't want to go back? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Luna, what you experienced was real. You don't have to minimize it or explain it away to make other people comfortable." She nodded and went back to writing, her hand moving slowly across the paper as she translated feelings into words that bureaucrats could understand and file away. The phone rang, interrupting their work. Cal glanced at the caller ID and felt his stomach drop. Murphy's auto shop. "I have to take this," he told Luna, stepping into the hallway. "Where the hell are you?" Murphy's voice carried the frustration of a man whose day had started going wrong before sunrise. "The Henderson transmission is supposed to be done today, and Mrs. Rodriguez called about her van making that noise again." Cal closed his eyes. He'd completely forgotten about work, about the customers who depended on him, about the income he couldn't afford to lose. "Murph, I'm sorry. I'm dealing with some family stuff." "Family stuff? Son, your family is one 6-year-old boy and a stack of bills that ain't getting any smaller while you play hooky. It's complicated." "Complicated how? And don't tell me it's about that runaway girl, because Mrs. Chen already filled me in on that particular brand of stupidity." Cal felt a flash of anger. "It's not stupidity. She's just a kid who needs help." "And what happens to your kid when Child Services decides you're unfit to parent because you're harboring runaways? What happens to Milo when they take him too?" The question hit Cal like a physical blow. In all his planning and paperwork and determination to help Luna, he hadn't fully considered what failure might cost Milo. The state didn't just evaluate your fitness to foster other children, they evaluated your fitness to parent, period. That's not going to happen. You better hope not, because if it does, you'll have helped exactly nobody and lost everything that matters. Murphy's voice softened slightly. "Look, I get it. The girl needs help. But you can't save everyone, Cal. Sometimes the best thing you can do is call the professionals and step back." After hanging up, Cal stood in his hallway, staring at the family photos that lined the walls. Sarah smiling at their wedding, Milo taking his first steps, the three of them at the beach last summer before the money got too tight for vacations. Normal moments from a normal life that suddenly felt very fragile. "Cal!" Luna's voice was small from the kitchen. "Is everything okay?" He returned to find her watching him with those two perceptive eyes, her victim impact statement forgotten on the table. "Murphy's worried about me missing work," he said simply. "Oh," Luna's face fell. "I'm causing problems for you." "No." "Well, yes, but not the kind you think." Cal sat back down, running his hands through his hair. "Luna, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She straightened, preparing for whatever difficult truth was coming. "Are you sure about this? About wanting to stay here, I mean? Because once we start this process, once we get the lawyers and social workers involved, there's no going back. Either we make it work, or everything falls apart spectacularly." Luna was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. "Can I tell you something about my brother?" Cal nodded. "The night before they separated us, Marcus made me promise something. He said no matter where they put me, no matter how bad it got, I had to keep looking for places where I felt safe. He said home wasn't about buildings or addresses, it was about people who made you feel like you belonged." She met Cal's eyes, and he saw steel beneath the vulnerability. "I've never felt safe anywhere before this, not really. Even with Marcus, we were always waiting for the next placement, the next move, the next time someone would decide we didn't fit their family." Luna's voice grew stronger. "But here with you and Milo, I don't feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I feel like I'm home." Cal felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of truth that went deeper than logic or fear or practical concerns. "Okay," he said simply. "Then we make it work." That afternoon, while Milo was at school, Cal and Luna walked to the Millbrook Public Library to use their computers and research everything they could about emergency custody, foster care licensing, and family reunification services. Luna proved to be a natural researcher, her 12-year-old fingers flying over the keyboard as she navigated websites and databases with surprising skill. "Look at this," she said, pointing to an article about sibling placement services. "They have programs specifically for finding separated siblings. There's a database where Marcus could register if he's looking for me." Cal read over her shoulder, hope building in his chest. "We can register you too. Let him know you're safe and looking for him." "Really? Really?" They spent the next hour filling out online forms and uploading Luna's information to every sibling search database they could find. With each form submitted, Cal watched Luna's posture change, her shoulders straightening, as if the simple act of looking for Marcus was giving her strength. "Cal?" Luna's voice was thoughtful as they walked home through the late afternoon cold. "Why are you doing this? Really?" It was a fair question, one he'd been asking himself since that first morning when he'd found her in his truck. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe because I know what it's like to be alone in the world. Maybe because Milo needs a sister as much as you need a family. Maybe because helping you feels like something Sarah would have done." "Your wife?" "Yeah, she always said the best way to honor the good things in your life was to pass them along to someone who needed them." Cal smiled, remembering. "She would have liked you. She would have said you have an old soul." "What does that mean?" "It means you understand things most kids your age don't have to think about. But it also means you're wise enough to know when it's okay to stop being so grown up and just be a kid." That evening, they celebrated their research success with dinner at Luna's request, Sarah's recipe for chicken and dumplings that Cal hadn't made since the anniversary of her death. Luna helped with the cooking, carefully following the handwritten instructions in Sarah's neat script, asking questions about ingredients and techniques. "She wrote really neat," Luna observed, studying the recipe card. She was a teacher, 2nd grade, said if kids couldn't read her handwriting, how could they trust her to teach them to read? "She sounds nice." She was. She would have made you feel welcomed from day one. Probably would have had you enrolled in school and signed up for art classes before you knew what hit you. Luna smiled at that, and Cal realized it was the first time he'd talked about Sarah without the conversation ending in sadness. Maybe that was what healing looked like, not forgetting, but remembering with joy instead of pain. As they ate dinner together, Milo regaled them with stories from school, his 6-year-old perspective making ordinary events sound like grand adventures. Luna listened with the attention of someone who'd never had the luxury of childhood normalcy, asking questions and laughing in all the right places. "Mrs. Patterson, me teacher, not the foster dad, says we're going to start a pen pal project after winter break," Milo announced. "We get to write letters to kids in other countries." "That sounds fun," Luna said. "Have you ever had a pen pal?" "Just my brother. But that's different." "Not really. A pen pal is just someone you care about who lives far away." Milo's innocent wisdom struck Cal as particularly profound. "Maybe your brother is like your pen pal right now, and someday he'll be close enough to visit." Luna's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears, the kind that came from hope instead of despair. "Yeah, maybe he will." Later that night, as Cal tucked both children into bed, Milo in his room, Luna, on her couch that was slowly becoming more permanente, found himself thinking about the day's conversations. About Murphy's warnings and Luna's courage, and Milo's uncomplicated acceptance of their growing family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more paperwork, more phone calls, more opportunities for everything to go wrong. But tonight, all three of them were safe and fed and together, and Cal was beginning to understand that sometimes that was enough to build a future on. As he turned off the lights and headed to his own room, Cal caught sight of Luna's latest drawing on the refrigerator, the 4 stick figures she'd drawn earlier in the week. But she'd added something new, a house around the figures, complete with windows and a door and smoke curling from a crooked chimney. Home, Cal realized. She'd drawn them a home, and maybe, with enough determination and a little luck, they could make it real. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning, in the kind of freezing rain that made every surface treacherous. Cal was driving Luna and Milo to their respective destinations, Luna to a meeting with Morrison to review their custody application, Milo to school when a delivery truck ran a red light at the intersection of Main and Elm. Time slowed to a crawl as Cal saw the truck approaching too fast for the conditions. He yanked the wheel hard to the right, but the old Ford's tires couldn't find purchase on the slick asphalt. The impact came from the passenger side, a crushing sound of metal and glass that seemed to go on forever. When the world stopped spinning, Cal's first coherent thought was about the children. His ears were ringing, his left shoulder screamed with pain, but he twisted in his seat to check the back. "Milo, Luna." "I'm okay, Daddy." Milo's voice was small and scared, but steady. "Luna's hurt." Cal's heart stopped. Luna was slumped against her seatbelt, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead where it had struck the window. Her eyes were closed, and she wasn't responding to his voice. "Luna, honey, can you hear me?" He reached back awkwardly, his shoulder protesting every movement. "Luna!" She stirred slightly at his touch, her eyes fluttering open. "What happened?" "Accident. Are you hurt? Can you move everything?" Luna tried to sit up straight, wincing. "My head hurts, and my arm." She lifted her right arm with difficulty, and Cal could see it was bent at an angle that made his stomach turn. The sound of sirens grew louder, emergency vehicles converging on the intersection. Cal tried to stay calm, tried to project the kind of steady confidence that would keep both children from panicking, but inside he was terrified. Not just about their injuries, but about what would happen when the authorities arrived and found Luna in his car. "Listen to me," he said urgently, unbuckling his seatbelt so he could turn around fully. "When the police get here, they're going to ask questions. Luna, you're my daughter as far as they're concerned, okay? Your name is Luna Harper. But, no buts, just for now, until we can sort this out. Milo, if anyone asks, Luna is your sister. Can you do that?" Milo nodded solemnly, understanding that this was one of those grown-up situations where the truth was more complicated than it appeared. The first responder to reach their car was a young EMT named Rodriguez, who took one look at Luna's pale face and called for backup. Within minutes, their truck was surrounded by emergency vehicles, their small world invaded by uniforms and radios and urgent voices. "Sir, I need you to stay still," a paramedic told Cal as he tried to get out of the truck. "We need to check you for spinal injuries." "I'm fine, my kids. We're taking care of them. Just stay still." Cal watched helplessly as they carefully extracted Luna from the back seat, supporting her head and immobilizing her arm. She looked so small on the stretcher, her face white against the orange backboard straps. "I want to stay with my daddy," she said weakly as they loaded her into the ambulance. The EMT looked at Cal, who was being examined by another paramedic. "We're taking her to Millbrook General. You can meet us there once we clear you for transport." As the ambulance pulled away with Luna inside, Cal felt something break apart in his chest. This was exactly what he'd been afraid of: Luna, hurt and alone, surrounded by strangers who didn't know her story or understand why she was so terrified of hospitals and authorities. "Daddy, is Luna going to be okay?" Milo asked as they waited in their own ambulance. She's going to be fine, buddy. She's tough. But Cal wasn't sure he believed it. The way Luna's arm had looked, the amount of blood from the head wound she needed medical attention he couldn't provide, care that would require insurance and permissions, and all the legal documentation they didn't have. At the hospital, Cal paced the emergency room waiting area, while Milo sat in a chair, his legs swinging and his face unusually serious. They'd been there for over an hour with no word about Luna's condition, and Cal's anxiety was approaching panic levels. Mr. Harper, a young doctor in scrubs, approached them. "I'm Dr. Kim. I've been treating your daughter." Cal's throat tightened at the word daughter, but he nodded. "How is she?" "She has a concussion and a broken radius that's one of the bones in her forearm. We've set the bone and put her in a cast, but I need to discuss her medical history with you." "What about it?" "Doctor," Kim consulted his tablet. "She's showing signs of previous traumasome, old fractures that healed on their own, evidence of chronic malnutrition. I need to ask some difficult questions about her care." Cal felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. This was the moment when everything would unravel. "Doctor, it's complicated." "Mr. Harper." Dr. Kim's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm required by law to report suspected child abuse. I need you to help me understand Luna's medical history so I can properly treat her." The truth sat in Cal's throat like a stone. He could lie, try to maintain the fiction that Luna was his biological daughter, hope that the paperwork would sort itself out later. Or he could tell the truth and risk losing everything they'd built. "She's not my biological daughter," he said finally. "She's a foster child. I'm in the process of applying for emergency custody." Dr. Kim's expression didn't change, but Cal could see him processing this information. "And her previous injuries?" "From before she came to live with me, she was in an unsafe placement. That's why I'm trying to get custody to keep her safe." "I see. Do you have any documentation of this custody arrangement?" Cal pulled out the emergency custody application, the papers Morrison had given him, everything that proved he was trying to do this legally. Dr. Kim reviewed them quickly, then handed them back. "Mr. Harper, I'm going to need to contact Child Protective Services. It's protocol when we treat children in unclear custody situations." "I understand, but please, she's terrified of being separated from us. She's been through enough trauma." Dr. Kim nodded. "I'll make sure my report emphasizes that she appears well, cared for, and that her current injuries are consistent with the accident you described. But you should know that CPS will want to interview her." An hour later, Morrison arrived with the same official demeanor Cal remembered from their first meeting. But when she saw Luna lying in the hospital bed, pale and scared with her arm in a bright purple cast, something softened in her expression. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" Morrison asked, pulling a chair up to Luna's bedside. "Scared," Luna answered honestly. "My arm hurts and I can't remember everything about the accident." "That's normal with concussions. Dr. Kim says you're going to be fine." Morrison glanced at Cal, who was standing near the window with Milo. "Luna, I need to ask you some questions about living with Mr. Harper. Has he been taking good care of you?" Luna's eyes darted to Cal, then back to Morrison. "Yes, better than anyone ever has." "Has anyone hurt you while you've been staying there?" "No. Cal makes me feel safe, and Milo shares his toys with me." Morrison made notes on her ever-present clipboard. "What about school? Have you been attending school?" Luna's face fell. "No. Cal was going to enroll me, but then the accident happened." "I see." Morrison's tone was neutral, but Cal could see her adding up the violations: harboring a runaway, failure to enroll in school, emergency room visits without proper custody documentation. "Morrison," Cal said quietly, "can I speak with you outside?" In the hallway, Morrison folded her arms and fixed Cal with a look that made him feel like a teenager caught breaking curfew. "Mr. Harper, do you understand how this looks? A 12-year-old girl, with previous trauma indicators, no school enrollment, and now a hospital visit where her guardian can't provide proper medical history. I understand it looks bad, but Luna is thriving with us. She's happy, she's safe, she's starting to heal from whatever happened to her before." "That may be true, but I have to follow protocol. Luna needs to be placed in emergency foster care while we complete your application process. No. The word came out sharper than Cal intended. She stays with us. Mr. Harper, you said 48 hours. It's been 36. We've filed all the paperwork, we've started the process, and Luna has made it clear she wants to stay. You can't take her now. Morrison studied his face, weighing something Cal couldn't identify. The accident complicates things. The hospital has to file a report. CPS has to investigate. There are going to be questions about your fitness as a guardian. Then let them ask questions, but they can ask them while Luna is safe at home with people who love her, not in some emergency placement where she doesn't know anyone. And if I recommend temporary placement pending investigation? Cal felt something desperate and fierce rise in his chest. Then you'll have to explain to her why the system is failing her again. You'll have to look her in the eye and tell her that bureaucracy matters more than her well-being. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, looking through the doorway at Luna, who was showing Milo how to sign his name on her cast. The two children were giggling about something, their heads bent together like siblings who'd known each other their whole lives. Mr. Harper, Morrison said finally, I need you to understand something. That little girl has been failed by every adult in her life. Her parents, her foster families, the system that was supposed to protect her. If I let her stay with you and something goes wrong, if you can't handle the pressure or the financial strain or the complexity of her needs, I will have failed her too. What if something goes right? Cal asked quietly. What if we're exactly what she needs and she's exactly what we need? What if this is one of those cases where the system works because people choose to make it work? Morrison looked at him for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. I'm going to make some calls. I'm going to see if I can buy you more time. But Mr. Harper, if there are any more incidents, more hospital visits or problems at school or anything that suggests Luna isn't thriving, she goes into emergency placement immediately. Do you understand? I understand. And Luna goes to school next week. No more delays. Agreed. As Morrison walked away to make her calls, Cal returned to Luna's bedside. She looked up at him with eyes that held too much worry for someone so young. Am I going to have to leave? She asked quietly. Not if I have anything to say about it. But what if you don't? What if they make me go somewhere else? Cal sat on the edge of her hospital bed, careful not to jostle her injured arm. Luna, do you remember what you told me about your brother? About home being the people who make you feel like you belong? She nodded. Well, you belong with us. And sometimes when you belong somewhere, when it's really right, the universe finds a way to make it work. Cal smoothed her hair back from her forehead. But I need you to be brave for a little while longer. Can you do that? I think so. Good, because we're going to fight for this, all of us together. 20 minutes later, Morrison returned, with an expression that was equal parts relief and apprehension. She pulled Cal aside again, her voice low but urgent. I've spoken with my supervisor and the family court judge. We're going to fast-track your emergency custody application, but there are conditions. What kind of conditions? Luna starts school Monday. You both attend family counseling sessions. You complete the foster parent training program within 60 days. And Morrison paused, studying his face. There's been a development. A young man called our office this morning after seeing something on social media about the accident. Cal's heart started beating faster. What kind of development? Someone posted a video from the accident scene. It's been shared several thousand times in the past few hours. The video shows you telling the EMTs that Luna is your daughter and her calling you Daddy as they put her in the ambulance. Cal felt the blood drain from his face. I was just trying to keep her calm. I know, but the video is going viral. The story is spreading poor single dad's daughter injured in accident, and people are responding to it. There's been an outpouring of support, offers to help with medical bills, donations to something called a GoFundMe page that someone set up without your knowledge. The news hit Cal like a second collision. People think you're a struggling single father whose daughter was hurt in an accident, and they want to help. The problem is, if this story gets much bigger, If reporters start digging into the details, they're going to discover that Luna isn't legally your daughter. And when that happens, this whole situation becomes very public, very complicated, and very difficult for all of us to manage. Cal closed his eyes, trying to process the implications. Their private struggle to become a family was about to become a public spectacle, complete with media attention and scrutiny they couldn't control. How many people have seen the video? As of an hour ago, nearly 50,000 views and climbing. It's been picked up by local news outlets, and the hospital called to tell me they've had reporters asking questions about Luna's condition. What do we do? Morrison looked through the doorway again, where Luna was now teaching Milo how to draw pictures on her cast. Honestly, I don't know. This is unprecedented in my experience. But I do know that whatever we decide, we need to decide it fast. The media attention isn't going to go away, and if we're not careful, it's going to complicate an already difficult situation. As if summoned by their conversation, Dr. Kim appeared in the hallway, his expression serious. Mr. Harper, there are reporters in the lobby asking about Luna's condition. Hospital security is keeping them out of the pediatric ward, but they're persistent. Cal felt the walls closing in around him. Everything they'd worked for, every careful step they'd taken to do this the right way, was about to be swept aside by viral video and public attention he'd never asked for. What do I tell them? Dr. Kim asked. Cal looked at Morrison, then back at the doctor. Tell them Luna is stable and recovering, and that the family requests privacy during this difficult time. And if they ask about the custody situation, tell them it's a private family matter. As Dr. Kim walked away, Morrison pulled out her phone again. I'm calling my supervisor. We need to get ahead of this before it spirals completely out of control. But even as she dialed, Cal could see it was already too late. Through the hospital room window, he could see news vans pulling into the parking lot, reporters setting up cameras for what would undoubtedly be the lead story on the evening news. Their quiet struggle to become a family was about to become everyone's business, and Cal had no idea whether that would save them or destroy everything they'd built. The video had been viewed 2 million times by Thursday morning. Cal discovered this sitting in Morrison's office, watching his private moment of terror and love play out on her computer screen. The footage was grainy, shot on someone's phone from across the accident scene, but the audio was crystal clear. Luna's small voice saying, "I want to stay with my daddy," as the EMTs loaded her into the ambulance, and Cal's desperate response, "She's my daughter. Please, she's my daughter." The person who posted it added their own commentary. Morrison explained, scrolling down to read the caption. "Single dad fights to stay with injured daughter after car accident. This is what love looks like." The comment section was a river of hearts and crying face emojis, strangers pouring out their own stories of loss and family and the bonds that transcended biology. But buried among the support were other voices, people asking questions, demanding details, calling for investigations into why a man would need to fight to stay with his own child. The GoFundMe page has raised $47,000. Morrison continued. Medical bills, living expenses, legal fees, people want to help, but they're donating based on a story that isn't entirely true. Cal rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of unwanted scrutiny pressing down on him. "What does your supervisor say?" "She says we're in uncharted territory. Child Services has never had to manage a case with this level of public attention. Every decision we make is going to be scrutinized by thousands of people who think they understand the situation based on a 30-second video. And Luna, how is she handling all this?" Morrison's expression softened. "Better than I expected, actually. She's more worried about you than herself. She keeps asking if she's going to get you in trouble." The irony wasn't lost on Cal. Luna, who'd spent her entire life being shuffled between homes and agencies, was now worried about protecting him from the consequences of their viral fame. "There's something else," Morrison said, pulling up a new browser tab. "We've been contacted by someone claiming to be Luna's brother." Cal's heart stopped. "Marcus?" A young man named Marcus Reeves reached out through the state's sibling reunification program after seeing the news coverage. He's requesting immediate contact with Luna. The words hit Cal like a physical blow. After weeks of searching, Marcus had found them, but not through their careful database registrations and official channels. He'd found them because their private struggle had become public entertainment. Is it really him? The details check out. Age, physical description, knowledge of Luna's history that wouldn't be public information. We're running a background check now, but I believe it's genuine. Cal should have felt relief, joy even. This was what Luna had wanted most, to be reunited with her brother. But instead, he felt something uncomfortably close to jealousy, a selfish fear that Marcus's return would mean losing the daughter he'd only just found. What does Luna want? She wants to talk to him, but she also wants to make sure it won't change anything with your custody application. Morrison studied Cal's face. Mr. Harper, Marcus turning up doesn't automatically disqualify your petition. Family reunification is always the goal when it's safe and appropriate, but in this case, Luna gets to have input in the decision. And if she chooses Marcus, then we help facilitate that transition. But if she chooses to stay with you while maintaining contact with Marcus, we can work with that too. That afternoon, Cal sat in his apartment with Luna and Milo, trying to explain why there were news vans parked outside their building and reporters calling their phone every 15 minutes. "So people saw the video of you calling me your daughter?" Luna asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Yeah. And they think we're actually family. Biologically, I mean." "But we are family," Milo said with 6-year-old certainty, "just not the born kind." Luna smiled at that, but Cal could see the worry in her eyes. "Are we going to get in trouble for lying?" "We didn't lie. In that moment, you were my daughter in every way that mattered. The paperwork just hadn't caught up yet." "And now everyone knows?" Cal nodded. "Morrison says we need to decide how to handle the media attention. We can either try to correct the story publicly, or we can let people continue believing what they want to believe. What happens if we tell the truth? Honestly, I don't know. Some people might understand and continue supporting us. Others might feel deceived and angry. It could help our custody case by showing public support, or it could hurt us by making it look like we were trying to manipulate people's emotions." Luna was quiet for a long moment, processing the impossible complexity of their situation. "What do you think we should do?" "I think we should tell the truth, all of it, about the foster system, about why you ran away, about how we found each other and decided to become a family. People deserve to know what they're really supporting. And if they stop supporting us..." Cal reached over and took her hand, careful of the cast on her arm. "Then we'll figure it out ourselves, the way we always planned to. Luna, this media attention, it's not why we're doing this. We're doing this because we belong together. Everything else is just noise." That evening, they received a call that changed everything. Morrison had arranged for Luna to speak with Marcus via video chat, a conversation that would take place under supervision to ensure Luna's emotional safety. Cal watched Luna's face as she saw her brother for the first time in 6 months. Marcus looked older than his 16 years, with tired eyes and the kind of careful posture that spoke of someone who'd learned to be ready for disappointment. But when he saw Luna, his face lit up with pure joy. "Luna, oh my God, you're okay. When I saw the news about the accident," Marcus's voice broke slightly, "I thought I'd lost you again." "Marcus!" Luna pressed her hands against the computer screen as if she could reach through it to touch him. "I've been looking for you everywhere. I registered on all the databases. I wrote letters." I know. I've been looking too. The group home I was in, they didn't let us use computers much. And when I aged out, I had to focus on finding work, finding a place to live." Marcus leaned closer to the camera. "But I never stopped looking. I promised you I'd find you, and I meant it." Cal watched the reunion with mixed emotions, joy at seeing Luna's happiness, but also a deep sadness at the thought of losing her just when they'd found each other. "Marcus," Luna said carefully, "I need to tell you something. Cal, the man in the video, he's been taking care of me. He wants to adopt me, to make it legal. Marcus's expression grew serious. Are you safe there? Are they treating you well? Better than anywhere I've ever been. Cal's like a real dad, and Milo's like the little brother I always wanted. They make me feel like I belong. That's all I ever wanted for you, to belong somewhere safe. Marcus glanced off camera, then back at Luna. Listen, I'm living in a studio apartment in the city now. I'm working 2 jobs, trying to save money. I can't take care of you the way you deserve, not yet. But you could visit? You could be part of this? If Cal's okay with that, if he understands that you and we're still family, even if we're not living in the same place. Cal stepped into the camera's view. Marcus, I'm Cal. Luna's told me a lot about you. Mr. Harper. Marcus's voice was respectful but wary. I want you to know how grateful I am that you've been taking care of my sister, but I need to understand your intentions. Are you looking to replace me, or are you willing to let Luna have both of us? The question was direct, mature beyond the boy's years. Cal could see where Luna had learned her emotional intelligence, her ability to ask hard questions and demand honest answers. I don't want to replace you, Cal said simply. I want Luna to have every person who loves her in her life. That includes you, and it always will. Something shifted in Marcus's expression, relief, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Then I think we should meet in person. Talk about how to make this work for everyone, especially Luna. As the call ended, Cal found himself facing a future more complicated than anything he'd imagined. A viral video had brought them public attention they didn't want, financial support they hadn't asked for, and a reunion with Marcus that Luna desperately needed. Now they had to figure out how to navigate it all while keeping their small family intact. Cal? Luna's voice was small as they prepared for bed. What if this all falls apart? What if the attention and the reporters and everything makes it too complicated for you to want me anymore? Cal knelt beside her makeshift bed on the couch, meeting her eyes in the dim light from the hallway. Luna, do you remember what you told me about families that choose each other being stronger than families that just happen? She nodded. Well, we chose each other, you and me and Milo. Whatever happens with the media or the legal system or anything else, that choice doesn't change. We're family now, and that's not something that can be taken away by reporters or bureaucrats or anyone else. Even if Marcus wants me to live with him, even then. Because loving Marcus doesn't mean loving us less, it just means your family got bigger. As Cal turned off the lights and headed to his own room, he could hear Luna's voice in the darkness, soft but clear. Thank you for choosing me. And despite all the uncertainty ahead, the custody hearing, the media attention, the complicated dynamics of blending their chosen family with Luna's biological one, Cal knew with absolute certainty that choosing her had been the best decision he'd ever made. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new reporters, new questions about their unconventional family. But tonight, all 3 of them were safe and loved and together, and sometimes that was enough to face whatever came next. The family court hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday, and by Monday evening the story had exploded beyond anything Morrison had anticipated. National news outlets had picked up the viral dad story, talk shows were requesting interviews, and the courthouse had to implement special security measures to manage the crowd of supporters and media who planned to attend. Cal stood in his bathroom mirror, trying to knot a tie Sarah had bought him years ago for job interviews. His hands shook with nerves as he struggled with the simple task, frustrated by his own anxiety when so much depended on appearing calm and competent. Need help? Luna appeared in the doorway, her cast decorated with encouraging messages from strangers who'd somehow gotten their address. She'd learned to manage most daily tasks one-handed, but her willingness to help others despite her own limitations never ceased to amaze Cal. I can't seem to get this right. Luna stepped forward and, with surprising dexterity for someone working around a cast, helped him straighten the tie. My brother taught me how to do ties. He said every man should know how to look presentable, even if he doesn't feel it on the inside. Smart brother. Yeah, he is. Luna's voice carried a mixture of love and nervousness. Marcus had arrived in town the day before and was staying at a nearby motel, preparing to attend the hearing as both a character witness for Cal and an advocate for Luna's wishes. "Are you ready for this?" Cal asked, studying her reflection in the mirror. "As ready as I can be." Luna straightened his collar with careful fingers. "Cal, what if the judge asks me to choose between you and Marcus? What if they make me pick? Then you tell them the truth, that you don't want to choose, that you want both of us in your life." Cal turned to face her directly. "Luna, whatever happens in that courtroom today, you don't have to choose between the people who love you. Family doesn't work that way." An hour later, they sat in the courthouse waiting area, a small island of calm in the chaos surrounding them. Murphy had come for moral support, his weathered hands clasped tightly in his lap as he watched reporters set up their equipment in the hallway. Mrs. Chen sat beside Milo, speaking to him quietly in Mandarin words of comfort that transcended language barriers. Marcus paced near the windows, his nervous energy evident in every step. He'd cleaned up well for the hearing, hair combed, wearing a button-down shirt that was probably borrowed, but Cal could see the street-smart wariness in his eyes, the careful way he assessed every person who approached them. "Mr. Harper," a young woman with a press badge approached their group. "I'm Jessica Ramirez from Channel 7 News. Could we get a statement from you before the hearing?" "No interviews," Morrison interjected firmly, appearing seemingly from nowhere. "Not until after the judge makes his decision," the reporter persisted. "The public has been incredibly supportive of your story. Don't you want to give them an update?" Cal stood up, drawing himself to his full height. "What I want is for my daughter to have privacy and dignity during one of the most important days of her life. The courtroom is where this story gets resolved, not on the evening news." As the reporter reluctantly moved away, Morrison pulled Cal aside. "Are you ready for this? Because once we go in there, everything changes. Win or lose, your lives will never be the same." "We're ready. There's something you should know. The Patterson foster family, Luna's previous placement, they've asked to attend the hearing. They want to contest your custody petition." Cal felt his blood run cold. "On what grounds?" "They claim Luna was manipulative and dishonest during her stay with them. They're arguing that placing her with you rewards her for running away and could set a dangerous precedent for other foster children." The news hit Cal like a physical blow. He looked across the waiting area at Luna, who was showing Milo how to sign his name on her cast, both children giggling about something that had lightened the mood, despite the gravity of their situation. "What does that mean for us?" "It means the judge will hear testimony from Mr. Patterson about Luna's behavior. It means Luna might have to face the man who traumatized her and defend herself against accusations that she's lying or exaggerating her experiences." Cal's hands clenched into fists. The thought of Luna having to relive her trauma in front of a courtroom full of strangers made him want to grab both children and run. But running had never solved anything, and today was about standing their ground. "She can handle it," he said quietly. "She's stronger than any of them know." When their case was called, they filed into a courtroom packed with supporters, media, and curious onlookers. Judge Patricia Hernandez presided, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of measured demeanor that spoke of decades spent making difficult decisions about children's lives. "This is an unusual case," Judge Hernandez began, "in that it has garnered significant public attention. I want to be clear that my decision will be based solely on the law and the best interests of the child, not on media coverage or public opinion." The first witness called was Morrison, who testified about Luna's history in the foster system, her allegations against the Patterson family, and her assessment of Luna's placement with Cal. "In my professional opinion," Morrison stated clearly, "Luna Reeves has shown remarkable improvement in emotional stability, physical health, and overall well-being since being placed with Mr. Harper. While the placement began under irregular circumstances, the care provided has been exemplary." Cal watched the judge's face as Morrison spoke, trying to read her expression for any hint of which way she was leaning. Judge Hernandez took careful notes, but revealed nothing through her demeanor. The second witness was Dr. Kim from the hospital, who testified about Luna's medical condition during the accident and his observations about her relationship with Cal. It was clear that Luna felt safe with Mr. Harper. Dr. Kim explained, children who have experienced trauma often struggle to trust adults, but Luna demonstrated a healthy attachment that spoke to good caregiving. Then Mr. Patterson was called to testify. Cal felt Luna tense beside him as her former foster father took the stand. Patterson was a thin man in his 40s with nervous eyes and the kind of smile that never quite reached the rest of his face. He wore a suit that was too big for him and spoke in the measured tones of someone who'd prepared his testimony carefully. Luna was a difficult placement, Patterson stated. She was manipulative, prone to lying about her treatment, and resistant to family rules and expectations. When she ran away, it was after we'd had to implement consequences for her dishonest behavior. Luna's breathing became shallow beside Cal, and he reached over to squeeze her uninjured hand. Marcus leaned forward in his seat, his jaw clenched with barely controlled anger. "What kind of consequences?" the Patterson family's lawyer asked. "We restricted her privileges, required her to earn trust through improved behavior, standard techniques for children with attachment disorders." Cal wanted to stand up and object, to point out that isolation and emotional manipulation weren't standard techniques for anything, but this wasn't his moment to speak. That would come later. The Patterson lawyer continued, "In your opinion, would placing Luna with an unlicensed guardian who enabled her running away send the wrong message to other foster children?" "Absolutely. It teaches children that they can manipulate the system by finding sympathetic adults who won't enforce appropriate boundaries." When it came time for cross-examination, Morrison's questions were sharp and direct. "Mr. Patterson, you mentioned that Luna was prone to lying. Can you give specific examples?" Patterson shifted uncomfortably. "She would claim that our household rules were unfair, that she was being treated differently than our biological children. Were your biological children required to earn the right to privacy in their bedrooms?" "That's different. Luna came to us with behavioral issues." "Answer the question, please. Were your biological children required to earn privacy in their bedrooms?" "No, but..." "Were they required to ask permission before using the bathroom at night?" Patterson's face reddened. "Luna had trust issues. We were helping her learn appropriate boundaries. By monitoring her bathroom visits, we were trying to keep her safe." Cal watched Judge Hernandez's expression grow more skeptical with each answer. Patterson's testimony was revealing exactly the kind of controlling, inappropriate behavior that Luna had described. When Patterson finally stepped down, Cal felt a small surge of hope. The man had essentially convicted himself through his own words, revealing a household where Luna had been treated more like a prisoner than a family member. "Mr. Harper," Judge Hernandez called, "please take the stand." Cal's legs felt unsteady as he walked to the witness stand, acutely aware of every pair of eyes in the packed courtroom. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, then settled into the chair and looked out at the sea of facet-supporters, reporters, strangers who'd somehow become invested in their story. "Mr. Harper," Morrison began gently, "can you tell the court about the morning you found Luna?" Cal cleared his throat, forcing himself to speak clearly despite his nerves. "I was getting ready for work, and when I opened my truck door, she was there, curled up in the passenger seat, clutching a backpack like her life depended on it." "What was your first instinct?" "To call the police, to do what I thought was the responsible thing." Cal's eyes found Luna in the gallery, but she looked so scared, so small. "And when I mentioned calling authorities, she said, 'Please don't call them,' in this voice that broke my heart." "Why didn't you call Child Protective Services immediately?" Cal took a breath, knowing his answer would be crucial. "Because I grew up in the system. I know what it's like to be a number on a caseworker's file, to be moved around when things get complicated. and I could see in Luna's eyes that she'd been hurt by people who were supposed to protect her. So you decided to help her yourself? I decided to give her a safe place to figure out what came next, just for a day at first. Then one day became 2, then 3. Cal's voice grew stronger. By the end of the week, she wasn't just a runaway I was helping, she was family. Morrison walked him through the details of Luna's integration into their household, his research into emergency custody procedures, the way she'd bonded with Milo. Cal found his rhythm, speaking directly to Judge Hernandez about bedtime stories and homework help, and the careful way Luna had learned to trust again. Mr. Harper, Morrison said, Luna comes with significant trauma and complex needs. Are you prepared to handle the challenges of parenting a child with her history? No one's ever prepared for everything, but I'm prepared to love her unconditionally, to get her whatever help she needs, and to never give up on her. Cal leaned forward slightly. Your Honor, Luna isn't a problem to be solved. She's a child who deserves a family that sees her potential instead of her past. When the Patterson lawyer cross-examined him, the questions were predictably hostile. Mr. Harper, isn't it true that you're facing eviction? I was behind on rent, yes. The viral video and donations from supporters have helped stabilize our finances. So you're dependent on charity to provide for Luna? Cal felt his temper flare but kept his voice level. I'm using every resource available to give Luna the life she deserves, including help from people who believe in what we're trying to build. And what happens when the media attention dies down, when the donations stop coming? Then we'll make it work the way families always have, through love, determination, and taking care of each other. The lawyer pressed harder. Isn't it true that you called Luna your daughter at the accident scene to prevent her from being taken into custody? I called her my daughter because that's what she is, not legally at that moment, but in every way that matters. And yes, I was terrified they'd separate us when she needed me most. So you lied to emergency responders? Cal met the lawyer's eyes steadily. I told them the truth about our relationship. The paperwork just hadn't caught up with our hearts yet. After Cal stepped down, Marcus was called to testify. The 16-year-old looked impossibly young in the witness chair, but his voice was steady as he spoke about his relationship with Luna. She's my little sister, and I love her more than anything in the world. Marcus said simply, for the past 6 months, I've been working 2 jobs, saving money, trying to create a life where Luna and I could be together again. And what's your opinion of Mr. Harper's care for Luna? Morrison asked. Marcus glanced at Cal, then back at the judge. At first, I was jealous. I was angry that someone else was taking care of my sister when that was supposed to be my job. But then I saw how happy she is, how safe she feels, how much she loves Mr. Harper and Milo. Do you support the custody petition? Yes, ma'am, because Luna deserves a family that can give her everything she needs, right now, today. I'm 16 with a GED and 2 minimum wage jobs. Cal's a grown man with a stable home and the resources to help Luna heal from everything she's been through. What about your relationship with Luna? Would adoption by Mr. Harper affect that? Marcus smiled, the first genuine expression of joy Cal had seen from him. Cal already told me I'm part of this family. Luna's going to have a dad, a little brother, and a big brother who loves her. She's going to have everything. Finally, Luna was called to testify. Cal watched her walk to the witness stand with her head held high, her purple cast bright against the dark blue dress Mrs. Chen had bought for the occasion. She looked tiny in the wooden chair, but her voice was clear and strong when she spoke. Luna, Morrison said gently, can you tell the judge why you want to stay with Mr. Harper? Because he makes me feel safe. Luna said simply, not safe like I'm being watched all the time to make sure I don't do anything wrong, but safe like I'm loved, even when I make mistakes. Can you describe what life is like in the Harper household? Luna's face lit up. Cal helps me with homework and makes pancakes on Saturdays and reads me stories before bed. Milo shares his toys and teaches me how to build forts and calls me his sister like it's the most natural thing in the world. Judge Hernandez leaned forward. Luna, you understand that adoption is permanent? That if I grant this petition, Mr. Harper becomes your legal father? Yes, ma'am. And you want that? More than anything, Cal already feels like my dad. This would just make it official. What about your relationship with Marcus? How would adoption affect that? Luna looked across the courtroom at her brother, her expression serious but hopeful. Marcus will always be my brother, but now I get to have two brothers and a dad. Marcus said families that choose each other are stronger than families that just happen, and we're all choosing each other. The Patterson lawyer's cross-examination was brief but pointed. Luna, did you ever lie about your treatment in the Patterson home? No, sir. Did you ever refuse to follow household rules? Luna's voice grew quieter, but remained steady. I asked for privacy in my bedroom and the right to use the bathroom without asking permission. If that's refusing to follow rules, then yes. Did you run away to avoid consequences for your behavior? I ran away because I was scared and because staying felt dangerous. I ran away because I needed to find someone who would listen to me instead of just punishing me for having feelings. When Luna stepped down from the witness stand and returned to sit beside Cal, he felt a surge of pride so intense it nearly brought tears to his eyes. This brave, articulate child had just advocated for herself with a maturity that would have been impressive in an adult. Judge Hernandez called for a brief recess to review her notes and consider the testimony. The waiting felt eternal 20 minutes that stretched into hours while Cal's small family sat together, holding hands and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. When they reconvened, Judge Hernandez's expression was unreadable as she prepared to deliver her decision. This case presents several unusual circumstances, she began. An unlicensed placement that began under irregular circumstances, significant media attention, and complex family dynamics involving both biological and chosen relationships. Cal's heart hammered against his ribs as he waited for the words that would determine their future. However, the evidence is clear that Luna Reeves has thrived in Mr. Harper's care. Her physical health has improved, her emotional stability has increased, and she has formed healthy attachments that demonstrate healing from previous trauma. Hope began to build in Cal's chest, but he forced himself to remain still, to wait for the complete decision. Furthermore, Luna has clearly and consistently expressed her desire to remain with Mr. Harper, and her brother Marcus supports this placement while maintaining his own relationship with Luna. Judge Hernandez looked directly at Luna, then at Cal. Therefore, I am granting the petition for adoption. Luna Reeves will become Luna Harper, with all the legal rights and protections that entails. The courtroom erupted in cheers and applause. Cal felt his knees buckle with relief as Luna launched herself into his arms, careful of her cast, but unable to contain her joy. Milo jumped up from his seat, shouting, "We did it, we did it," while Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Marcus crossed the gallery in 3 quick strides, enveloping both Cal and Luna in a fierce hug that spoke of gratitude and relief and the beginning of something new. "Thank you," Marcus whispered against Cal's shoulder. "Thank you for giving her everything I couldn't." Judge Hernandez waited for the celebration to quiet before continuing. "I want to address the media attention this case has received. While I understand the public's interest in this story, I want to remind everyone that Luna is still a child who deserves privacy and the chance to adjust to her new circumstances without constant scrutiny." She looked directly at the reporters in the gallery. "I trust that you will respect this family's need for space as they begin this new chapter." As they left the courtroom, Cal found himself overwhelmed by the crowd of supporters waiting in the hallway. Strangers who'd followed their story online approached to offer congratulations, their faces bright with vicarious joy at the happy ending they'd helped make possible. Mr. Harper, Jessica Ramirez from Channel 7 pushed through the crowd. "How does it feel to know you're officially Luna's father?" Cal looked down at Luna, who was still pressed against his side, her face glowing with happiness. "It feels like coming home," he said simply. "Luna, what do you want to say to all the people who supported your family?" Luna looked up at the cameras with those serious eyes that had seen too much but now held hope instead of fear. "Thank you for believing that families can be built with love instead of just luck. Thank you for helping my dad prove that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing can be the same thing. What's next for the Harper family? Cal smiled, pulling Milo and Luna closer. School on Monday, homework, chores, all the normal, boring, wonderful things that families do together. Later that evening, after the reporters had gone home and the adrenaline had faded, the Harper family sat around their kitchen table with Marcus, sharing takeout Chinese food and processing the magnitude of what had happened. "So what's it like?" Marcus asked Luna, "having a last name that matches your family?" Luna considered this seriously. "It feels like I finally exist, like I'm not just passing through anymore. And you're okay with me being Uncle Marcus instead of just Marcus?" "I like Uncle Marcus. It means you're part of this too, officially." Cal watched the siblings navigate their new relationship dynamic with the careful grace of people who'd learned not to take love for granted. Marcus would return to the city tomorrow to finish his own senior year, but he'd be back for weekends and holidays, a permanent part of Luna's life now that she had a stable home base. "Cal," Luna said quietly as they prepared for bed, "can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think my mom and dad, me birth parents, would be okay with this? With me choosing a different family?" The question caught Cal off guard. In all their conversations about Luna's past, they'd never talked much about the parents who'd lost custody when she was 4, whose rights had been terminated after years of failed reunification attempts. "I think," Cal said carefully, "that if they loved you, and I believe they did, even if they couldn't show it in healthy ways, they would want you to be safe and happy and loved. And you are all of those things. Sometimes I feel guilty, like maybe I should miss them more, or wish things had been different. Luna, loving the family you have now doesn't diminish whatever love you had for the people who came before. Hearts don't work that way. They just get bigger to hold more people." As Cal tucked Luna into her bed, no longer a makeshift arrangement on the couch, but a real bed in a room they'd started decorating together, she handed him a new drawing. This one showed 5 stick figures: Cal, Luna, Milo, Marcus, and a woman with angel wings hovering above them all. "That's Sarah," Luna explained. "I drew her watching over us. Mrs. Chen says people who love us never really leave, they just love us from somewhere else." Cal looked at the drawing, at the way Luna had positioned Sarah's angel figure with arms outstretched over the whole family, and felt something settle into place in his chest, peace he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death. "She would have loved you so much," he said quietly. "I know. I can feel it sometimes, like she's proud of us for finding each other." As Cal turned off the lights and headed to his own room, he caught sight of his reflection in the hallway mirror. He looked different somehow, not just tired from the long day, but fundamentally changed. He was no longer just Cal Harper, widowed mechanic, struggling to raise his son alone. He was Luna's father, Milo's dad, Marcus's chosen family member. He was exactly who he was supposed to be. In his bedroom, Cal sat on the edge of his bed and finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of what they'd accomplished. Against all odds, despite a system that could have destroyed them, they'd become a family. Legal, permanent, unbreakable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, helping Luna adjust to her new school, navigating the ongoing media attention, figuring out how to blend their chosen family with the biological connections that were also important. But tonight, all 3 of his children were safe and loved and legally his, and that was enough to build a lifetime on. For the first time since Sarah's death, Cal fell asleep without worrying about tomorrow. Because tomorrow they would face together as a family, with all the messy, complicated, beautiful love that entailed. 6 months later, Cal stood in the doorway of what had once been Murphy's auto shop, watching Luna help a group of younger children plant vegetables in the raised garden beds they'd built, where the old hydraulic lift used to be. The transformation was remarkable. What had been a functioning garage was now the Millbrook Family Resource Center, a combination shelter, classroom, and community space funded by the donations that had poured in after their story went viral. "Hard to believe it's the same place," Murphy said, joining Cal in the doorway. The older man had officially retired, selling the building to the non-profit organization Cal now managed. but he came by most days to help with repairs and mentor the teenagers who were learning automotive skills as part of their job training program. "Sometimes I miss the smell of motor oil," Cal admitted, watching Luna demonstrate how to properly space tomato seedlings. "But this feels right too." The center served 15 families at any given time, parents who'd aged out of the foster system with children of their own, teenagers like Marcus who needed support transitioning to independence, and younger kids who just needed a safe place to do homework while their parents worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. Luna had become something of an ambassador for the program, her story inspiring other children to believe that broken situations could be repaired with enough love and determination. She'd started a weekly support group for kids who'd been in multiple foster placements, sharing her experience of finding permanent family and helping others navigate their own searches for belonging. "Ms. Luna," called 8-year-old Tyler, one of the newer residents. "The carrots aren't growing right." Luna wiped her hands on her jeans and knelt beside Tyler's garden plot, examining the tiny green shoots with the serious attention of someone who understood that small things needed careful tending to grow strong. "They look perfect to me," she said. "Carrots just take time. The good stuff happens underground where you can't see it, and then one day you pull them up and realize they've been growing all along." Cal smiled at her wisdom. Luna had changed remarkably over the past months, still serious and thoughtful, but with a lightness that came from security, from knowing she wouldn't wake up tomorrow in a different place with different rules and different people deciding her fate. "Dad," Milo's voice carried across the garden as he raced toward Cal, his backpack bouncing with his 7-year-old energy. "Guess what happened at school today?" The word "Dad" still sent a small thrill through Cal's chest. Both children called him that now, naturally and without reservation, as if they'd been doing it their whole lives. "What happened at school?" Cal asked, catching Milo in a hug. "Mrs. Patterson, me teacher. Mrs. Patterson, not the bad one," she said. "My essay about our family was so good she wants to read it at the school assembly next week." "That's fantastic, buddy. What did you write about?" "About how families can be born, or made, or found, and how ours was all three." Milo pulled a crumpled paper from his backpack. "Want to read it?" Cal took the essay, written in Milo's careful second-grade handwriting, and felt his throat tighten as he read. "My Family" by Milo Harper. "My family is special because we found each other instead of being born together. My dad lost his first wife, who was my mum, and she died of cancer. My sister Luna lost her first family too, but not from dying, just from not being safe. We found each other and decided to be a family because sometimes the best families are the ones who choose each other. My dad says love isn't something that runs out when you give it to more people. It just gets bigger like a balloon that gets more air blown into it. So when Luna became my sister, it didn't make me less loved, it just made our family more loving. We also have Uncle Marcus, who is Luna's brother, and he comes for dinner every Sunday and teaches me how to draw motorcycles. And we have Mrs. Chen, who watches us after school and makes the best dumplings. And we have Murphy, who used to fix cars but now fixes broken hearts. I think our family works because we all needed each other and we were brave enough to say so." The end. Cal had to blink several times before he could speak. "Milo, this is beautiful. I'm so proud of you. Luna helped me with the big words, but the ideas were all mine." As the afternoon wore on, Cal found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The center was thriving, serving nearly 100 families since opening 3 months ago. Luna was excelling in school, her natural intelligence finally given the stability and support it needed to flourish. Milo had blossomed with a sister to look up to and protect in equal measure. And Marcus had become the family member Cal had never expected, stopping by most evenings after his job at the auto parts store, helping with homework and sharing stories about his and Luna's childhood that helped fill in the gaps in her history. He was planning to start community college in the fall, studying social work, with the goal of eventually working in the foster care system himself. "Cal?" Luna appeared beside him as the day's activities wound down. "Can I show you something?" She led him to a quiet corner of the center where she'd created a small memorial wall photos and stories from some of the children they'd helped, updates on families who'd moved on to permanent housing, drawings and letters from kids who'd found their own versions of home. "I wanted to remember everyone," Luna explained. "All the kids who've been here, all the families who found each other through this place. Sometimes I think about the Luna who was sleeping in your truck 6 months ago, and I want her to know that everything scary she was going through was leading to something beautiful." Cal studied the Waldersons of faces, some smiling, some serious, all of them carrying stories of resilience and hope and the human capacity to heal from even the deepest wounds. "You know what I think?" he said quietly. "I think that Lunath, one who was so scared and alone, I think she'd be amazed at who you've become, at the family you've built, the kids you've helped, the difference you've made. Do you really think our story has a happy ending?" Cal looked around the center at the children playing in the garden, at the families sharing dinner together, at the wall of faces representing hope made manifest. "I think our story doesn't have an ending. I think it just keeps growing, one person at a time, one family at a time." That evening, as had become their tradition, the Harper family gathered around their kitchen table for dinner. The table had grown over the months. They'd had to buy a bigger one to accommodate Marcus's Sunday visits and the various friends and extended family members who'd become part of their regular routine. Tonight it was just the four of them: Cal, Luna, Milo, and Marcus, who'd stayed for leftover pizza and help with Luna's algebra homework. "Marcus," Luna said as they cleared the dishes, "remember that story you used to tell me, about the princess who saved herself?" "I remember. Will you tell it to Milo? I think he'd like it." As Marcus launched into the familiar tale, updated now, with dragons who were really just misunderstood, and kingdoms where families came in all different shapes and sizes, Cal watched his children listen with the rapt attention of people who understood that the best stories were the ones that helped you believe in your own happy ending. Later, after Marcus had gone home and both children were in bed, Cal sat at his computer, writing his monthly report for the center's board of directors. The numbers told a story of success: families housed, children enrolled in school, adults finding employment and stability. But the real story was in the details those numbers couldn't capture: the way Tyler had stopped having nightmares about being moved to another placement, the teenager who'd aged out of foster care and was now assistant managing the center's computer lab, the single mother who'd gone back to school because she finally had reliable childcare and a support system. His phone buzzed with a text from Morrison, who'd become not just their caseworker but a genuine friend. "Saw Luna's presentation to the city council on the news tonight. That kid is going to change the world." Cal smiled, remembering Luna's passionate speech about the need for more family preservation services and sibling reunification programs. She'd spoken with the authority of someone who'd lived the problem and seen the solution, her voice clear and confident as she advocated for children who were still waiting for their own families to find them. As he prepared for bed, Cal paused in the hallway to look at the latest addition to their photo galleria, professional portrait taken at the center's grand opening. The whole extended family was there: Cal, Luna, Milo, Marcus, Mrs. Chen, Murphy, even Morrison. They were all smiling, arms around each other, looking like exactly what they were: a family that had been built through intention and love and the simple recognition that some people belonged together. But his favorite photo was still the one Luna had taken with her phone just last week, the three of them making pancakes on Saturday morning, flour in their hair and syrup on the table, looking completely ordinary and completely happy. Home, Cal realized, wasn't the house or the center or any physical space. Home was the sound of Luna and Milo arguing about whose turn it was to choose the movie, the way Marcus had started calling him Cal Dad when he was feeling particularly affectionate, the knowledge that no matter what challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together. As he turned off the lights and settled into bed, Cal could hear Luna writing in the journal Marcus had given her for Christmas, probably recording the day's events and thoughts. continuing the story that had started with a scared girl sleeping in a truck and had grown into something none of them could have imagined. Tomorrow would bring new children to the center, new families to help, new opportunities to prove that broken things could be repaired and lost people could be found. But tonight, Cal fell asleep to the sound of his daughter's pen scratching across paper, writing the next chapter of a story that would never really end because the best stories, the ones about love and family and choosing each other, just kept growing. One word at a time, one day at a time, one family at a time. In her room, Luna closed her journal and turned off her light, but not before writing one final sentence. Today I realize that home isn't where you start, it's who refuses to let you keep running. And in the quiet darkness of their house, three people who had found each other against all odds slept peacefully, knowing that tomorrow they would wake up together, still choosing each other, still building something beautiful from the pieces of what had come before.